Good day, good day. It is that 90s baseball pod coming back at you after a week off with Gregg Olson. We've got Gregg on the line at GREGGOLSON 30 on the Twitter machine. Mr. Olson, how are we today?
Good, Brandon. How about yourself?
Not too bad. And if people are watching on the video, I have to admit, I kind of primped up a little bit because we are welcoming one of the best looking right-handers from the 80s and the 90s. I am absolutely delighted to bring on Angels color man, Mark Gubicza. How are we doing, man?
Brandon, Ollie, what's going on, fellas? It's great to be up here and talking with you guys this early in the morning, man.
Yeah.
We got you at 8 a.m. I can't tell you how much appreciate you jumping on with us. And I know it's 8 a.m. It's early, but like you said, you got things to do and people coming over to visit you in a little bit. So I appreciate you making some time for us.
Oh, you know, my motto always was sleep was overrated. I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead. So I'm fine.
Well, and I saw
you know, go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I just saw him taking pulls from coffee before you jumped on the call. So I know he's getting all lathered up for us.
Yeah.
I never forget the first time I heard you say that was in Kansas City. We were together in 95. And I think we might've got into Texas at about 2 a.m. and you and Monty had it'd be Jeff Montgomery had a 6 a.m. tee time. And I was like, I am not making it. And you were like going, dude, you can sleep when you're dead.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, I'll make it.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a pretty fun segue. So Mark, you spent a great portion of your career in Kansas City. How different was it pitching in the summer in Kansas City versus Texas? Because Kansas City is a meat grinder from probably July on, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, especially, with the AstroTurf, there were some times, especially some of those day games where I remember one day game I was pitching in August against the Red Sox. It was like 160 something on the turf. I mean, it was insane how hot it was. But for whatever reason, I grew up in Philly, which was hot and humid during the summertime that, I never pitched well in April. And hopefully you guys never look up my numbers in April because they're not real good. So I liked it warm. And, for whatever reason, and Oli knows this is better than anybody. I could sweat in a refrigerator. I was so, I was always sweating and lathered up. So I liked it. I threw less pitches warming up to get into the game and it got in a better flow when it was hotter. So yes, it was hot there. Texas was unreal. And I finally figured it out. You remember the old stadium there in Texas, even in the newer yet old stadium in Texas. Now they have another new one. That, I mean, up on the sign, they would say it's 132 degrees or something. I'm like, how can it be 130 some degrees? There's no way we'd be all fried. But I think it was all part of that home field advantage. But it was hot, but there was nothing really quite like. And I'd only played in St. Louis or went there as a broadcaster. I know that place is hot, but Cincinnati the same. But Kansas City during the summertime, boy, it got pretty hot.
I remember just watching all our guys coming in there and I never figured out why, at least Texas would shut off the day game starting May 1st. Kansas City, man, it was a Sunday day game. Didn't matter if it was August, if it was April, it did not matter. You were playing a day game. And I remember looking at some of our guys and some guys were putting lettuce in their shoes because their feet were so hot out on the turf. And I mean, it was 130, whatever, sitting out in the bullpen, I was frying, but just laughing at all the guys trying something to get their feet were just burning up on the turf and wearing those black spikes.
You don't need Burt Blyleven for a hot foot there. That's hot foot on its own.
Yeah, no Burt Blyleven needed there in Kansas City during those hot summer days.
So you like the heat. You landed in, I guess, Los Angeles, Anaheim. I don't know what the Angels call themselves right now. But
Angels.
Yeah. So you're in Southern Cal, and people should follow you on Twitter at Mark Gubicza, Gubicza, if people are not familiar with the spelling. But you are doing color commentary for them. Out of curiosity, so you said you were from Philly.
Mm-hmm.
You played forever in Kansas City, and yet you pitched a few innings for the Angels, and you work for the Angels. How did that come to be? Because a lot of times, guys like Oli here, he's going to work with the Orioles because he played for the Orioles for a long time. How did that come together for you?
Yeah, Ray, that's a great question because, obviously I always joke around about my ERA with the Angels. If I could move that decimal point over a little bit, it's actually not too bad. But where it's at right now in my career, it's not real good. So, what it is, my wife's from out here. We've been living out here during the off season since '86. So, I did some stuff for the Angels when I was done playing. That was my one real regret in my career. I didn't do anything for the Angels. I felt that I tried everything to be able to come back. I had surgery, even tried to come back in the middle of the season with it. Didn't work out, but I started doing some radio stuff out here out of the blue, and even a show on Fox Sports. It was called Baseball Today, kind of a takeoff of Baseball Tonight. And a couple of the Angels people say, "Hey, will you be interested in doing some pre and post game stuff for the Angels?" I said, "Sure." And I did some stuff for the Dodgers as well. And, then all of a sudden we're at one of their meetings during the wintertime, and our executive producer at that point, Tom Fuhr, came up and said, Hey, would you be interested in doing some games? I'm like, hello? Yeah. It started at 50 games and then it went up to 100. And then 15 years later, I'm still doing it. So yeah, it's a tough, weird question how this came about. But this relationships I built with Tim Mead, who was running the PR department at that point for the Angels, and Artie Moreno, the owner, we just hit it off really well. And, just being around doing these games every day has been really, really cool. And Ole, you know me well. I mean, people would always say, I can't believe you're doing this because you don't talk a lot in public, but he saw me enough in the dugouts, in the clubhouse, in the planes, and the buses. He knew I had a gift of gab. So this was kind of a fun thing, and this kind of evolved into where I'm at right now.
Well, you got a great personality, and it just, comes through. I got to being out in Southern California for the last 20 years. I got to watch you and do your work, and you're really good at what you do, and your personality, comes through, and you can flat out talk. You just, got to get around people that
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I feel a little intimidated being with guys who both do what you do. So maybe I'm not even necessary today.
But your hair is great, though. That's all that matters.
Thank you. My wife does hair, so I better be.
Yeah. I'll give you a warning, Gooby. Brandon will come up with a question that you have never been asked before.
All right. I better have another sip then at this point.
Take another pull.
I'm just giving you a warning because he's gotten me about 4 or 5 times so far in our podcast with something where I just sit there and I'm going, I've literally in 20 years never been asked that question. I was like, really good.
You don't realize how much my heart soars when you say that. So the fact that you say that feels so that for me, because I hate the cookie cutter analysis at the end of games, talk about this, talk about that. First of all, you're going to talk about it anyway, so I don't have to tell you to talk about it. But also, that's not a question. I need to ask you why you threw, like I was telling Gooby off the air, a 3-2 fastball when your split's been good all night, or why you why you went after a guy when he had Brett Maine behind him, right? Right, Ole?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a callback to Buck Showalter having you and Buck deciding to walk Barry Bonds with the bases loaded. But I digressed.
Buck decided that. I just went along for the ride.
That's one of my favorite clips, though, because it is absolutely great. I do want to talk about. We'll go back into the 80s a little bit, and actually, there's some fun contrasts between you guys. Not only starter versus closer, but college versus high school, early 80s versus mid to late 80s. So you guys have some contrasts that you can kind of bounce off each other. But the draft round, Mark, that you went in, the second round. Now, first of all, the draft was different back then, wasn't it? Didn't they have a January phase and then a June phase?
Yeah. So that year, that January, Danny Jackson was one of our top picks for the Royals. So it went from Danny Jackson that year to that spring was myself, David Cohen, another pitcher named Tony Ferrer, and then that following year was Brett Saberhagen. So John Shearholtz at that point when I was drafted was head of the the minor league department, and then eventually became the general manager. And we know now in Cooperstown,
he knows pitching.
Yeah, every time when you look at teams that are good now, even it's all about pitching. And we always joke about pitcher's the best athlete and this and that, but if you have good pitching, you automatically have a chance to win. Even if your team doesn't score a lot, you still have a chance. So I remember that draft that year thinking, boy, I hope I get drafted by the Phillies, because the crazy thing that in 1980, I'm at Game 6 of the World Series with my dad, the only game I ever went to in my whole life with my dad. I'm right behind the dugout because Ruben Amaro Sr. was a first base coach, and his two sons went to my high school, so they got us tickets. Literally, I'm right behind the dugout where that ball pops out of Bob Boone's glove and the Pete Rose's glove. So, and I'm sitting there. They win the World Series. I'm screaming, saying George Brett's the worst player ever seen. Willie Wilson's horrible. Frank White, these guys are the worst human beings in the world. I'm screaming everything. I'm finding out. I'm researching their moms' names and everything else. I'm screaming at them. And, and then they win the World Series. I'm like, hey, Tug McGraw, please get Willie Wilson up there so he can strike out again. And I'm screaming as loud as I can. Lo and behold, 6 months later, whatever, hey, Willie, you're the best guy in the world, man. You're my best buddy. And George Brett, I actually lived with George Brett my first 2 years in the big league, the first couple months of the season. So these guys I'm bagging on saying Schmitty's way better than George Brett. Lo and behold, I'm living with them in the next few years.
Well, not a bad pair to choose from between Schmitty and George Brett. You kind of got the who's who at the hot corner.
Oh, that's funny. That's really good.
Wow. That
Good story.
I hope people see the video to see my face from when when the wheel started spinning for me that those guys were Royals and you were a Royal. I was like, oh boy. Yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
I got to be
with twins.
I got to be. Go ahead, Mark Gubicza. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying we had some battles there. Even that year, we get to the playoffs. We win. I think we won 84 games my first year in '84. And then we got beat. In my opinion, to this day, I think the best team that nobody ever talks about was the Tigers. That '84 team.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was convinced everyone else had a 25-man roster. I was convinced they had a 40-man roster they were playing with every day. They had platoon guys. I mean, Howard Johnson was barely getting any at-bats at third base for him. Tom Brookins was getting a lot of at-bats. It was insane how good they were and how, you got Lance Parrish behind the plate. I'm thinking that's a gladiator before there was gladiators in baseball. So, Kirk Gibson, who wanted running down the line, wanted to rip your Achilles as you got to first base every time. He wanted to kill the pitcher covering the bag. They had everything going. Plus they had Jack Morris and, Willie Hernandez was the MVP as the closer that year. So that team was incredible. And then the next year, we're picked to come in 4th or 5th place in the AL West. And lo and behold, we won by 1 game over the Angels and ended up winning the World Series that following year.
All you, Oli, I jumped on you.
No, you're good. I was just running through and still laughing about the story, of you sitting there. I mean, you're ragging on a couple of the nicest guys that I was ever around. Frank White, Willie Wilson, George Brett, and then I'm still kind of processing that one, going, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. Did you ever tell him?
Of course. I mean, Willie Wilson, I told him that the first day I'm actually on the big league roster that year. I go, well, you have no idea how much of a hero you were of mine. He goes, really? I was? I go, yeah, because I was rooting for you to come to the plate every time against the Phillies in the World Series because I knew you were going to strike out. He goes, man, Gooby, that ain't cool. I go, hey, you're my friend now, but you weren't my friend then. So he started laughing. And you know how Willie was, man. He started giving me all kinds of grief about that. But, Frank White was, he was one of the all-time great. I mean, 8-time Gold Glove winner. But to this day, I saw a couple years ago when Vlad Guerrero got put in the Hall of Fame. I represented the Angels there, and Mike Schmidt and George Brett were there. And George was always giving me grief about that exact same story. He goes, man, Gooby liked you way more than me. And Schmitty, being Mike Schmidt, he goes, well, do you blame him? And George is like, hey, but he didn't live with you the first couple of years of the season. He goes, well, that's true. It's probably a good thing he didn't. And he just started laughing like that too, because Schmitty obviously I was playing stickball back in Philly in the schoolyards, and I was Mike Schmidt or Greg Lazinski or Gary Maddox or Bake McBride, all those guys in the 70s and 80s. So I was all emulating those guys playing stickball. But and you notice, Oli, when you idolize all these players and all of a sudden you're playing with them or playing against them, it's such a crazy cool feeling. You got their baseball cards, their Slurpee cups, and all these things, and you get to tell those stories. It's so much fun. I mean, I love the competition, but the stories and being around the guys and to say, I didn't like you back then, and now all of a sudden, like, you're one of my best friends, and George and I, we're still talking to each other all the time. But to have that, I'm thinking, man, I'm glad Dickie Knowles threw that ball up and in on him and dropped him at home plate in game 3 and whatever it was in Kansas City. And now he's my guy. So it's crazy to be able to think about you become a fan to becoming, friends for life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, obviously the Royals were huge. I grew up in Omaha, so you guys were huge to watch, and I grew up a fan of yours. Being a little bit younger than you, but George was gone by the time I got to you guys in KC. Frank was a coach, but it was just that group of guys. It was they were fun to watch, and then all of a sudden you get to know a couple of them. Frank and George would be around. It was just like the nicest, best guys that you could be around on a daily basis. It was lifting. It was nice. You root for them your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're on that team and you're around the room, and Frank White's one of your coaches, and you're just like, this guy couldn't be any nicer, And then I imagine for you, I'm thinking, we had Bull as our hitting coach for a little while, and what was that like for you, knowing, same kind of thing, and all of a sudden now he comes and that'd be Gregg Lazinski coming back and being the hitting coach for the Royals.
No, that was unreal. And having Bob Boone too. I mean, these are two guys, and Larry Bowe was end up being my bench coach with the Angels. So there are three guys that I when I first met, especially Bob Boone ended up being my catcher and then our manager there. But Gregg Lazinski, in the Bull Ring in Veterans Stadium, to go down there, because I was always in the 700 level. I had that $2.50 ticket because I didn't have enough money to go down there. But every once in a while, I tried to sneak down to the Bull Ring. That was right above left field around the 300 or 400 level. I'm thinking, okay, how are they going to let this low life me ever down there to that 300 or 400 level at a baseball stadium? So I finally made my way down there too. And Bull was the best. I mean, how about him on the buses and stuff? Because you go, hey Gooby, what was that pitch you threw to Jose Canseco? Because it went about 450 feet. Did you throw it exactly where you wanted it? And I'm like, oh man, I hate you, Bull. You're the worst. And then back and forth and all those things on the bus. But he was, I mean, I'll tell you what, I faced him when he was with the White Sox. And I remember one day, again, in a hot day in Kansas City, he's like overheating. So he's in our clubhouse laying on the trainer's table, and our team doctor's coming in there. I'm like, Doc, you got to save him. It's the Bull, please. That's one of my all-time favorite human beings. But it was so hot that day. And those unis the White Sox were wearing, God, I don't know what they were thinking of. But he ended up being obviously okay. But I'm like, please save the Bull. Please save the Bull. And eventually here he is in the clubhouse. I'm like, you're the worst. You're the worst. I used to love you growing up as a kid. I can't stand you now. And he'd be going, you can't even get anybody out anymore. Your arm is broke.
He was ruthless.
Oh, man.
Well, it sounds like the opposite of Willie Wilson. Then you'll love to hate, and then you hate to love. So that's a fun transition.
Yeah.
So to step back for a second, how does one go in the January draft That's easy for me to say, as opposed to June, because obviously you'd still been in high school in January, so you probably wouldn't have been eligible. But it doesn't make sense to me in the sense of like, okay, well, if you didn't go in this June draft, would you have been eligible in January the next year, or how did that work?
Yeah, Brandon, I'm going to probably get this wrong, and Ole may know this better than me, but I think most of those guys in that time in January were junior college.
Yeah.
Okay. So
okay.
I know Danny Jackson was that. I'll tell you what.
I think Kirby Puckett went in the January draft too.
Yes.
From
So
Triton,
Danny
Bradley.
Jackson was one of the nastiest pitchers I've ever seen. One of the fiercest competitors. I mean, we called him Jason from Friday the 13th because when he was on the mound or competing, like, didn't mess with him. And Bo Jackson, the strongest human being in the history of mankind, and all you know him well from your Auburn days too. They got, we're like Danny Jackson's legs were like a linebacker or even a running back like Earl Campbell back with the Houston Oilers. And they were messing around one day, and Danny being Jason at that point of the day, and they started wrestling, and Bo didn't get the best of him. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I ever want to mess with Danny Jackson, because two things come to mind. He's the strongest guy, one of the strongest guys ever. Plus, there might be a few loose screws in there. So I'm like, I'm not messing with him. And his slider was like Ron Guidry. And his fastball ran, and he was similar to me, where he was a drop and drive guy. So he was really crushing his left knee, and I'm crushing my right knee. But that was something the Royals were big believers in, to keep the ball down, as the old drop and drive Tom Seaver type of delivery. But I'll tell you, we had some, and only you were around with me in our team enough. We had some interesting characters over the years, from Jeff Montgomery and guys like that, where guys that you look at and you have a conversation with, really nice guy, but like when you're on that baseball field or in that dugout, it's a different. I mean, same thing with me. Everyone, I was convinced every human being hated my guts that didn't have the same uniform. Because every guy that came over from Neil Heaton, he goes, man, we used to scream at you, saying this and that about you all day long. He goes, you're really not that bad of a guy. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm wearing a different color uniform than you. I don't care if you hate my guts. I even fought my brother on a basketball court for a loose basketball, and then it didn't work out for me, by the way. My brother was pretty tough. And later on that day, real quick, my dad goes, all right, if you guys are going to fight on the court and embarrass me. So he gives us 2 pairs of boxing gloves to finish off the fight when we got home. I'm like, really, Dad? Did you see me getting beat up on the basketball court? He goes, now it's time to finish it. I'm like, oh. In other words, he was trying to make a point. Don't fight your brother on the court, because now you got to fight him at home with boxing gloves on. I'm like, oh, that's a real good idea. I think I'm going to pass on that one too.
And
I mean, is your brother bigger than you? Because, dude, you're 6'6"?
Yeah, no. I mean, I have a brother that's 5'8". I have a brother that's 5'10", and this brother's 6 foot, but he's one of those silent guys that you always worry about. The guys that are quiet, you know that. The guys that are quiet is one you always worry about. But and he was quick. He was like Doc Holliday on Tombstone, man. He was real quick with the draw. So, and I wasn't. I was waiting around like, look, what am I going to do? Boom, I'm already knocked down. So no, wasn't a good decision.
well, you mentioned Neil Heaton. You went in a pretty impressive row of players, actually. This is not in the first round, but the second round. But it was Mike Gallego, who was a very good infielder for a long time. Then you, Mark Langston, who was a terrific pitcher for the Angels and a few other teams, Mariners. And then one pick after that, Frank Viola, who Twins fans saw a lot of, also Mets, Red Sox, kind of all over the place too. That's quite a run of talent in a second round. That looked like a picks like 3, 4, 5, 6 in the first round, not 7, 8, 9, and 11 in the second round. That's an incredible run of talent right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I know Tony Gwynn was that 3rd round pick that year, and Joe Carter was in that draft. I mean,
Wow.
A lot of people talked about that draft as being one of the better ones, because the baseball draft is unlike any other draft, because you could be the first overall pick. And our first round pick, you know, Dave Leeper was an outfielder with USC, good dude, played maybe 30 games in the big leagues with us, and that was it. So there's no guarantee ever in baseball, as far as if you're a first rounder, you get a better opportunity to play, they'll keep you around more so. But I mean, that draft, I look back, because we always joke, because Gallego's the bench coach with the Angels, and and Mark Langston does the color analyst job for the radio side. So we're all right in a row just laughing at each other. We're all standing over Mike Gallego, go, wait a minute, you were drafted ahead of us? And he's just sit there and laugh and have a good old time. So same, Mark Grant, who does the color analyst job for, the Padres, always jokes around and goes, hey, by the way, guys, I was a first rounder. You guys weren't. I'm like, oh man, he killed you on that one too.
By the way, so, I want to test Oli here. Any idea who was the last pick of that second round? Because I suspect Gubicza knows, but it's a very famous non-baseball player who went 52nd overall to the Yankees.
Oh, I got no idea. I mean, no, I got nothing.
Gooby, what do you got?
Is it Elway?
It's John Elway. So
Wow.
literally, if you sort by career WAR, and I don't know if you guys like WAR as a stat, but we don't have to talk about that. It goes Langston, Viola, Gubicza, Gallego, Darren Jackson, Sid Bream. I mean, you're talking about some guys who had some either really big individual moments or very good careers. And then all the way down there, you're like, holy smokes, John Elway went in that draft too. Like that is a first round worth of talent in the second round. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, because I just saw this, because I'm always just checking out baseball, little odd things on Twitter and stuff and social media. And I guess in '79, the Royals drafted Dan Marino. I thought he was a second rounder too, but I think it ended up being maybe a 4th round pick. And I'm thinking that would have been pretty cool to be able to, suit up the baseball uniform with Dan Marino, because I heard he was a really, really good pitcher out of Pennsylvania area too, where I grew up. So, it's pretty cool when you look at some of the names that were drafted, and some of the guys, even when I was drafted, thinking these guys are so much better than me. I mean, you played in college, so you played against a better, competition, Oli. But when you're drafted at high school, I think the first pitch I ever threw, Daryl Boston, I think, who's now the first base coach for the White Sox, hits a line drive right off my wrist. I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm not that good anymore.
Did he really?
The first pitch I threw, I'm like, wow. I'm like, fortunate enough, I got it out with it somehow, some way. But I was like, whoa. I'm like, everybody is really, really good. In high school, you think, okay, you're the guy. But when you get drafted and everyone else is really good, and it's like, man, you're like, you're salmon swimming upstream. You're trying to be the one that makes it up there without the bear getting it. But so much great talent. It's so much fun to compete against the guys that, that like were fast, could throw harder, could hit the ball a mile. So it was fun. Andres Galarraga, my first year in A-ball, hit a ball about 450 feet, the first home run I ever gave up in professional ball. I'm like, man, I hope I never face this guy again, or hope he never makes it to big leagues. Lo and behold, yeah, I did.
Jeez.
Yeah,
So,
he got me too. So
I think he got a lot of people, especially once he got to Colorado. But before that, he was pretty good too. So your path to the big leagues, though, again, different than Gregg's. I think, like we say, Gregg was in the minor leagues for about a half an hour. You had the full, or at least a very extensive minor league experience, including throwing 196 innings in one minor league season. I don't think they do that anymore.
No, and that was in Double-A too. And my manager was Gene Lamont, who ended up being a major league manager, as third base coach for a lot of years. And it was crazy, especially because you really don't know what your path is going to be. Growing up in Philly, you play baseball. It'd be the same thing you ran up there in Minnesota. You play baseball for like 3 months.
Right.
And then everybody you're hanging out with in the minor leagues played in California, Texas, or Florida, where they play 12 months a year. So you think, okay, they're way more advanced than me. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it to Triple-A, but Double-A, I remember, pitching well, and I'm in an All-Star game that year with Mark Langston, Jimmy Key, and a bunch of other Danny Tartable. All those guys were in Double-A that year, and I was in Jacksonville, and Gene Lamont was like, there was about 3 or 4 guys that they kept moving up from our roster, and 3 of them were pitchers, and he pulled me aside. He goes, so what do you think about yourself? I'm like, that's some sort of a trick question. I think I'm lucky, whatever. I don't know what else to say. And he goes, are you mad at these 3 other guys have been called up to Omaha and you're not? I go, no, I'm happy for them. They're friends. He goes, but you're pitching way better than them. I go, what kind of case you making for me right here, Gino? I said, what do you want me to say? He goes, trust me, those guys are going up to Omaha. That's great. You're not going. Just keep your mouth shut. Don't worry about it. Maybe you'll never go to Omaha. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm thinking, geez, am I going to be released out of Double-A? Because I always thought, especially when you're at high school, you go rookie ball, A-ball, Double-A, Triple-A, and then you might be in Triple-A for a couple years before you do that. Because my A-ball year, I got hurt. I only pitched like 10 games. So, I mean, I was progressing at a pretty rapid rate and still having no idea how that was even happening. So when he said that, I was like, man, I was kind of mad that, okay, maybe I should have been already moved up to Omaha. That way I'm that much closer to reaching my dream. But when I look back now, that was probably the best thing anybody's ever said to me. He goes, don't worry about going to Omaha or Triple-A because you might not have to go there. And I never thought anything but the fact is, what is he talking about? So obviously the next year I skipped Omaha, went from Double-A to the big league. So that was pretty cool.
You did eventually make it to Omaha, but it was under different circumstances.
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah, I did. Yes. There's a couple of rehab assignments here and there.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the all-time, I have to tell this story. And I don't know if I ever told you this one, Holy. So we're playing in one of those exhibition games. So every year the Royals would go to Omaha, and I'm sure you saw us there, Ollie.
Oh yeah.
And then we're playing a game, I think it was at 4:00. And it was sunny. And I remember pitching, and I'm thinking, you know what? I can't even see home plate. And the sun was going through the old stadium, like right in my eyes. And we're playing against, our guys, the Triple-A team. So I'm in there, I'm looking, I can't see the sign. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to throw the ball. And then I'm thinking, boy, if it's a line drive back at me, I have no chance of getting out of the way. So I throw a pitch. And for whatever reason right now, I'm losing my thought about it, who the hitter was. So it was my old roommate in rookie ball. So I hit him literally right in the mouth with a pitch, right in the mouth. So I'm looking, he's one of my good friends there. And we're looking on the ground for his teeth. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe what this happened, because he didn't see the pitch. I didn't even see where I threw it. So he's like leaning out over the plate. Like most hitters will turn their head like this. He looks in there like to try to see the ball. We're thinking, why are we playing at this hour of the day? But it was one of those times where you were going there and you didn't want to be that pitcher pitching that game because that means they skipped your spot in the rotation. So I was like, oh man. So everything's going wrong for me that day. So I was lucky from that point forward. That's the last game. I don't know if it was because of what I did or because I actually started pitching a little better. I never had a pitch in that exhibition game there in Omaha.
Well, whatever makes you feel better, I would say would be the reasoning.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
What Gregg's face right now, if I can paint a picture for people who are not watching.
I just running through that whole scenario of hitting the guy in the face. And it's like,
I think Gregg's counting his teeth right now, making sure that,
I've been in the other spot too, Gooby, where you're sitting there and I think I was in Buffalo, right before, I don't know if it was right before I ended up with you guys in Kansas City in 95, but same thing, kind of a day game. Everybody seemed to be wearing white shirts, and it was like I ended up getting hit in the chest with a line drive, and it was just like it was more disturbing. It hurt, but it was more disturbing that I never saw it, you know. And so I can imagine what you're thinking out there, going, okay, I can't see anything. And then he hit the guy in the face.
Yeah.
So,
and like I said, his name Joe. He was my roommate, and I think he eventually made it to the major league level. But I'm thinking, I felt so horrible. I couldn't really pitch anymore from that point. One, I hit my share of batters. Actually, I think I still have the record in Kansas City, which is I don't know if I'm proud of that or not proud of that one. But to hit him like that and thinking, am I going to derail his dream of getting to the major leagues myself?
Yeah.
Doing that killed me, and I was like, I was shot that rest of that day. But I mean, he was a tough dude. I think he was from Chicago, Illinois area, as a matter of fact. And Joe, said, hey man, I didn't see the ball. I said, I didn't even see it out of my hand. So he goes, no big deal. And he was like, he was playing shortly thereafter. That's the thing. It was crazy. He was a tough kid, and that's the only way you can come back. When you get a line drive as a pitcher, you better get right back out there and pitch again, or it starts creeping in your mind, and then you start recoiling as a pitcher and you're worried about line drives and this and that. Then you're not as effective. So you got to bounce back there as quick as possible.
Let me ask you, Gooby. While we were competitors, I was with Baltimore, you were in Kansas City. One of the nastiest guys and I'm sure I told you when I got over there in 95, hated you because I knew I wasn't going to be pitching that day you were going to stuff us in Baltimore with your nasty sinker slider. Always one of my favorite. Do you see anybody today in today's game that was you?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of. God, boy, there's been some pretty good ones. Because we're in an era where so many more pitchers are throwing four-seam fastballs and curveballs. The crazy thing, guys, when I was drafted out of Philly, I threw a four-seam fastball and a curveball, literally straight over the top. I got down there the first day in camp, in rookie ball camp. They go, you're throwing a two-seam fastball and a slider. I go, but I throw a four-seam and a curve. They go, you're throwing a slider and a sinker. I go, okay, sir. All right. So I immediately abandoned that. So there's a couple guys that I'm trying to think right now that, especially that you see Ian Anderson, the kid from the Braves, has some pretty good movement down
He's
below
really good.
the strike zone. I looked at last night with Garcia is another pitcher for the Astros that throws that hard sinker. Anybody that throws a hard sinker now you're starting to see the evolution where it's okay for hitters to make contact against you, because if it's on the ground, it takes 3 or 4 hits to get a run as compared to home runs. And everyone was thinking, okay, we got to avoid the lower part of the strike zone because everyone's into that so-called launch angle where they're lifting the ball up, but it's still a hard pitch to hit out of the ballpark when it's at the knees or below with some movement. So I always believed that you take the sting of the bat by running that fastball either on the hands of the right-handed batter or towards the end of the bat. So you're starting to see that evolution coming back now. Bottom line is there's so many incredible athletes in our game right now. Why would you not utilize them? I mean, watching the I saw in Andrelton Simmons, granted, there were some times where it wasn't as good for him in Minnesota, but when he was with the Angels, I've never seen anything like him. You saw him.
He was good, but not as good, yeah.
Oh, my word. I mean, you're talking about shortstops, and the Angels had Jose Iglesias this year making plays that were incredible.
Yep.
second baseman's making, incredible plays. Third baseman, first baseman. Before you had a big guy like a Steve Balboni who could hit a home run and he could scoop some throws, but range wasn't necessarily there. But now you're seeing guys. So I love the fact that when you see guys pitch in the lower third of the strike zone, that it's not a bad thing anymore, that it's a way to get people out.
Well, so for your time, and we talk about Gregg's strikeout propensity, which for relievers different. If you struck out, if you now are a reliever striking out a batter per inning, they don't care. That's pretty standard. Back in that day, it was a big deal, and for starters, it was pretty much unheard of. But you were in that 6 to 7 range for strikeouts per 9 innings, so you still managed to strike people out. I don't know. I guess I'm not totally sure what I'm asking. It's just like the evolution of the game to where 6 strikeouts per 9 went from the top of the top to now you better have a really good ground ball pitch or something like that. How did you kind of transcend that? Because you were striking guys out in an era where people weren't really striking out even 6 batters per 9 innings.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have a lot of conversation even with some of the players now, from guys that are on the Angels starting staff or even other teams. And, regularly you're seeing guys with 200 plus strikeouts or 250, a Garrett Cole with even not with over 200 innings with 250 strikeouts. Hitters at that point were embarrassed when they struck out. They really were. I mean, they wanted to fight you if you struck them out. So for me to get a strikeout, I mean, I had to really battle because as a sinker ball pitcher, it's tough to get hitters to swing and miss at a fastball at the knees. They're going to make some sort of contact. So I had to fight my way to get ahead of the count and try to finish them off, to get them to swing a slider about 8 feet outside. That was my goal. But, and especially early in my career. And I think that's part of the reason why I was so inconsistent early in my career with a lot of walks, because I tried to throw the ball through the catcher. I tried to throw the nastiest slider every pitch. And then I finally realized I had a pitching coach named Frank Funk, and you probably know him, Ollie. He came up, and his big thing in spring training, he said one line to me. He goes, "I need you to try easy." And I'm looking, I'm like, and Ollie knows me, Brandon, real well. That's not in my DNA. I'm a psycho when I'm out on the mound. But he said, if you try easy and not try to throw the ball through the catcher, look how many outs you can get on 1 or 2 pitches. So I'm like, oh man, I just don't have it. So he says it in spring training. So you get some spring training games to kind of work on it. And lo and behold, I'm going 9 innings with 88 pitches, 92 pitches, and said I did that in 4 innings early in my career. So even at the high school level where I'm teaching at right now, I have a little bet with my kids. I go, hey, how many outs can you get with 2 pitches or less? And they're thinking, hey, that's pretty good. Because I said, then you save your nasty, Gregg Olson curveball to get a strikeout. Because if I get an out with 1 or 2 pitches, well, I save my best pitch when I need it with a guy on third base. I mean, that's your goal, to save your best stuff when the guy's in scoring position. Because otherwise, you make a mistake, hit out of the ballpark, that's your fault. But if you make a good quality pitch, you might give up a single, but it's going to take a couple of them to score. But if you walk guys, which I did a ton of, I think I had 120 walks back in '87, which is incredible how many walks I used to have. That I finally figured it out, and that's why I got more consistent, a little bit better.
So to dive one last time into your minor league experience, in 1 year and then the next, you played with, I want to say, teenage Brett Saberhagen and David Cohen, or vice versa. So when I call them Baby Cohen and Baby Saberhagen, I'm not being derisive. They were literally teenagers. What was it like coming up with those guys? Because that's a pretty impressive trio. I mean, we talk about Hudson, Mulder, and Zito, and Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine. Granted, Maddox came over from the Cubs, but that's an impressive trio to come through all the same system at pretty much the same time. What was that like?
That was crazy, because here's David Cohen going back. He grew up in Kansas City, so he's big George Brett fan. I'm a Mike Schmidt fan. So right away we're clashing right away. Who's better to third baseman? And then so I think going away from home for the first time in my life, we're in the minor leagues. We're staying in baseball. We went to Baseball City after a few years, but we're in Sarasota, where the academy was there. That's where Frank White, we used to call him Academy Frank. So you're in. Sometimes you're in a room with 4 guys, sometimes you're in a room with 8 guys and 2 guys, and you're living away from your home for the first time in your life. You're eating dorm food. And I remember thinking, man, I hope I get hurt. I want to go home. I don't want to do this. There's no way I can't. I went from, being around my mom and dad, my 3 older brothers. I have 17 dudes. We hang around at the schoolyard every day, rain, snow, cold, hot. And I'm down there and I'm in an environment where I wasn't comfortable. So David Cohen and I became like fast friends right away. And, his personality, were rock and rollers. And then you get to the competitive nature where you're competing against each other. Cause at some point you're battling for maybe the same job. So
Yeah.
you're friends, yet you're competing. And then the next year, Sabes is drafted. So here he is. I'm looking at Sabes. I'm East Coast, like crazy, John Wick guy from all the movies. And here's Sabes Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High wearing a hat. And he's got a Sabes 1 on the back of his El Camino truck driving down to spring training. And I'm like, who is this dude? There's no way. This is a classic styles. And lo and behold, we became incredibly fast friends. And he was with us in AA. And we went all the way to the finals in Birmingham. We were taking on the Tigers and, for the championship in AA. We became friends. And so that next year we're in spring training, and I was making that jump from AA together. And Coney that year in '83 was covering home plate in a spring training game, late covering the plate. The guy slides in and blows out his knee on a hard slide. So Coney's path to the big leagues was delayed a little bit, while Saberhagen and myself were on that fast track. So we're in spring training that year, and Joe Beckwith, God rest his soul, was picked up in a trade, and he was supposed to be one of our starters, and he had some of the best stuff I've ever heard. I mean, I used to listen to Ollie pitch, and I can always hear a curveball going through, and everyone goes, how do you hear a curveball going through the air? But you can hear that, and Joe Beckwith had that too, and throwing mid-90s at that point. He had a trouble throwing the bases, so there's one game where he wasn't able to throw strikes warming up, so Dick Hauser goes, hey, can you pitch? I'm like, oh yeah, I can go right now. So Saberhagen and myself started pitching well, and at that point, they never told you if you made the big league club. So we're like, wait a minute, nobody said anything. So we literally got our luggage. We snuck it in with all the other players' luggage. We ran to the back of the bus, thinking maybe nobody will notice we're on the bus. We're hiding back there. We drive to the airport. We're doing the same thing, getting on the plane. We're playing Memphis, our AA team, in an exhibition game before we head off to Kansas City, because Avron Fogelman was one of our owners, and he lived in Memphis. So we're thinking, wait, does he have any idea we're even on this plane or on this bus? And finally, Dick Hauser comes back and goes, what are you guys doing? You think you're going to sneak one through me like we didn't know you were on the plane, like you guys were stowaways? We knew what we're doing. You guys better not, and he goes, you two better not mess up, because I'm sticking my neck out for you guys. I know you didn't pitch in AAA, but I have a lot of trust in your stuff. So you better go out there and perform. And lo and behold, we were roommates on the road and at home. So it was crazy how we were able to sneak our way. At least we thought we snuck our way onto the plane and bus.
Wow.
Oh, that's priceless. That really is.
What a 3-year run for you then, because 84 you guys go face the Tigers, and then 85 you win the World Series. And then the rest of your career, Kansas City's kind of seeking that consistency. Were you spoiled a little bit early in your career by that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because here I remember when I was drafted by the Royals, my dad goes, "That's a great organization," because they're in the American League. At that point, I was a total National League guy. But you look at the Royals, 3 straight years they're in the playoffs, and then in '80 they're in the playoffs in the World Series. So every year they're in the playoffs. So here I am in '84, win the playoffs again. I'm thinking this is going to happen every year. So then you win the World Series, and then you're always going to have that little bit of a hangover, but that very next year, right at the All-Star break, is the thing I think it really sent the organization on a difficult path, was when Dick Hauser came back. And I'll never forget this. I get goosebumps coming in. We're in Baltimore, as a matter of fact. And when our PR director, Dean Voglar, comes in, he goes, guys, we have an announcement to make. And we're thinking, all right, we know we're struggling. We know we always play better in the second half and this and that. Because even that year in '85, we were horrible going into the All-Star break. We're like 7 games out. And he said, Dick Hauser won't be with us to manage the rest of the season. He's battling brain cancer. We were all like, and it was like boom. And it's like, because he was an amazing manager, but he was a manager where you literally, if you had a bad game, he'd come up to go, my bad, I put you in a bad position. I'm like, no, you didn't make the pitches. He goes, no, I should have had you in a position where you could succeed. And when you pitched well, he goes, hey man, you were awesome. I mean, he was that guy. We used to, he's almost like a little pit bull where he protected you with an incredible passion, but when you were successful, he allowed you to breathe and enjoy the success. So there wasn't anybody quite like him. He was very, very protective of his players. And that really put us in a spot where it really went with downward spin for a long time after Dick passed away that following year.
Yeah. What,
Wow.
not to steal if Greg had a question here, how would you compare and contrast 84, 85 to 2014, 2015, making the playoffs? Obviously the playoffs are structured differently. I think they'd win the wild card game one of those years, and the wild card didn't exist for 10 more years after you guys had your run. But it was a build. It was a get to the cusp and then get over that hump. I think a lot of people view success linear that way.
Yeah.
And it worked for you guys in that respect, but you guys kind of did it in a different way though. I mean, Kansas City in the, 5-6 years ago had that core of Hosmer, Kane, Moustakas, all those guys. And you guys had that core that kind of hung around still, but without the benefit of the wild card, you guys could get to the cusp, but not quite get over the hump to make the playoffs there a few times into the future.
Yeah, I was, obviously you're still pulling from the organization that brought you along. It was your family, and in Kansas City, my two oldest children were born out there in Kansas City. I love the place, and to see that and see the lack of success for years. It was almost nearly 30 years from when we won the World Series, make the playoffs, till their run. They had the same thing in 14 and 15, where we had in 84, 85. And so, here they are, they're playing the Giants. And, I talked to my wife, I go, hey, let's go out to the World Series for game 6 and hopefully game 7. So we go out, we go on, we buy our own tickets, get a hotel room, we get our airfare, and we're sitting in the 300 level there in the club level in Kansas City. And people are looking like, wait a minute, you're sitting amongst us right here. They're like, yeah, because I just wanted to sit there and have a beer with you guys and just have fun. And I remember they're sitting there going, and the excitement level in that stadium was insane. When they won game 6, I'm like, here I am going back. I'm almost like reliving my life as a Philly fan, watching that World Series. Here I am in game 6. They win that game, and it was insane. And, people were just going nuts. So then that game 7, so like, all right, we got to go game 7 too. So we stuck around, and I'll never forget this, when the bullpen opened up and Madison Bumgarner came out, and the fans go, so what do you think, Ubi? I'm like, I'm not feeling real good right now. This dude is, I thought, and to this day, I think he put together the best playoff postseason run of anybody in the history of sports. I mean, what he did, how that team ever won, anyhow, the Giants in 14 was unreal. So he comes in there, they're like, all right. So I said, this weather the storm, go George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, this rope-a-dope. He's only going to pitch 2 or 3 innings. He just pitched a couple days ago. So then, like, the 3rd inning, he's out there. And then the 4th inning, I'm like, I'm not feeling good right now. I'm like, well, hey, at least you can always remember that 85 team that won the World Series, because it could probably be a long time again. So he was incredible. But the atmosphere in that ballpark, the sea of blue, because even if back in 85, we're playing the Cardinals, there was still a huge Cardinal fan base out in that area, because, the Cardinals are the Cardinals. So there was still some red shirts and here and that at Kauffman Stadium or Royal Stadium at that point. But there was an absolute sea of blue there. And to see them come back the following year to finally do that, it was pretty cool to see that. Because, I knew Mike Moustakas from coaching against him in high school, because he went to Chatsworth High School and I coached against them. And all those guys, getting to know them, and Alex Gordon, an Omaha guy, all those guys coming up together, fighting and dealing with why you guys so bad, to all of a sudden this core of very good high draft picks. They had a lot of number 1 draft picks go through there, all put it together. Their bullpen, Oli, their bullpen was unreal.
Yeah,
unreal.
They really were good.
Oh my God. I mean, they had guys throwing at 1,000 miles an hour, every one of them. But, from Wade Davis on through to Herrera, and, they were really, really good. And, to see them win that and beat the Mets the following year, and as a Philly guy, anytime you beat a New York team, it's always a good thing for me.
Yeah. You had
right. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, so you had some pretty great guys in your back pocket for closers. I wanted to ask you about that, because obviously Oli's experience is end of games, yours is beginning of games. But Quisenberry, Montgomery, you were blessed with some pretty good bullpen guys.
Yeah, I mean, and Steve Farr was in that conversation too.
Yep.
I mean, so it was the personality difference between Quiz and and Steve Farr, and then you got Jeff Montgomery, and I still call him Snake Pliskin,
Yeah.
because we used to joke around saying Monty's on the mound throwing the ball, and all of a sudden he pops up, the home plate, puts the ball exactly where he wants, like he slithered underneath the ground and popped it up there because he wasn't a big guy. And you often wondered, man, how he got people out consistently. And his slider was great. His fastball command was awesome. But even all the time with Ole there, to pick the brains of guys in the bullpen, it's a different beast. I pitched one year down there in the bullpen in 94. And it's a different beast. I mean, because you feel like you're an everyday player because the phone rings, you're up. So you have a chance to get an everyday starter. We're all crazy dudes. So we pitch that one day, we're flicking sunflower seeds or screaming at the other team, the other four. Our golf game's incredible because we got 4 days in between starts to do that. But a bullpen guy, because you never get noticed when you do your job. But if you blow a save or give up a home run and a game's lost, everyone knows you. You got to deal with looking at your starting pitcher in there, go, dude, man, you just lost my win, man. I worked 7-8 innings for a W and then it's gone. But that relationship you build and Quiz was incredible. But Jeff Montgomery and I and Steve Farr, and we call him Beast. We still give him grief for the tightest jeans ever he used to wear, and all this stuff.
That's in style now, though.
Yeah, I know. I feel pretty good about bringing that back now. By the way, yeah. Yeah, I mean these guys they're so it's so different. It's like a field goal kicker in football. And when you make a field goal, dude, you're supposed to make that. Even if it's 67 yards now, you're supposed to make it. But if you miss it, what's wrong with you? Why? How can you possibly miss a field goal? And then you put everyone else in that same position. As a closer, the same thing. There's a lot of guys, especially in our era, where sixth inning, seventh inning, they're 6 or 7 inning guys. But when you put them in that 9th inning, man, because the focus level for the manager, the hitters, the guys on the bench, the fans is insane. And people don't understand how difficult that is to get those last 3 outs. Everybody goes, oh, who cares about a save? That's why you had guys like Lee Smith take it forever getting in the Hall of Fame. Like, how can you not protect a 3-run lead for 1 inning? Or how do you get a save if you go 3 innings and do the job? I'm like, because you don't know what it's like to do that, because it's a different beast for guys in the bullpen. And I learned that when that phone would ring or being out there thinking, not only I'm trying to win the game for everybody in the stands, but my teammates and everything else. And if I make a bad pitch, all that hard work goes away because I didn't make my pitch.
You ended up with 2 saves. Tell me about them.
Yeah, I mean, the one I had, I bring up that 3-inning save. I got one of those. I think we were up pretty decent amount of runs. But I remember one game, and I think it was I might even got it. I even got a W one time out of the bullpen getting. I think Cal Ripken did roll into a double play with the bases loaded. I came in a game, but the one game I came in, it was a 1-inning save. I remember feeling that I could throw the ball through the wall, and I did some closing over in the Japan tour in '88. And I remember, at that point, they were measuring velocity out of your hand like they are right now. So when you're throwing 93, 94 in our day, that's when it's crossing the plate. Now it's out of the hand. So there's a pretty significant distance the baseball is going from your hand to home plate. So I'm not saying we were throwing 99 to 100, but out of your hand, it's a little bit different beast. So that's why when you see numbers now, even when they're measuring outfielders throwing some outfielders, the ball out of their hand is like 97 miles an hour. I'm like, I've seen enough of those throws. It is a 97, but when it's out of the hand, but it creates good conversation for us all in social media and stuff and doing games now, because wow, this guy's throwing 99 miles an hour. But out of the bullpen, where you don't have to worry about, letting it all out, for 9 innings, you just go out there and let it out for 1 inning. It's a lot more fun because you feel like you're a boxer. You're out there and you're just letting it out. You're trying to go toe to toe, or a hockey player when you're dropping the gloves. It's like, hey, I'm going to get that first shot in there and I'm going to do well. That's what I love. It was so cool to be down in the bullpen. And I'm always was jealous of you guys and you in particular, when you can go out there and just go out and have the entire game in your hand that last moment. Because the starter, it's a buildup of one, and hopefully you'll be out there for the 9th inning. But as a closer, especially, that 9th inning is like, that's it. That's like you're putting, you're Tiger Woods. You got an 8-foot putt to win the Masters, and as soon as you let it roll, you're already walking to the cup ready to pick it up and you're going home. with the victory.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the back closing.
No, it was a blast, and having guys like you starting the game, and if I did screw it up, you were the first one to give me a pat on the shoulder, going, dude, you're good, you're all right, everything's fine, and love that about you. But we got you for maybe a couple more minutes. Tell me about your AllStar experiences.
Well, the first one, 88, I was, I remember calling my mom and dad, said I made the team, and I had my aunt and uncle come up, and it's in Cincinnati. I was so nervous. Willie Mays is in the clubhouse, and Lou Brock, and all these, George Bush Sr. was in our clubhouse, and I didn't really enjoy it. I was so nervous. I remember going in the outfield during batting practice. I sat up against the wall because I didn't want to look like a goofball trying to catch a fly ball. Like, I used to love shagging batting practice and diving for the ball, but I didn't want to look horrible at all. So I'm thinking everything went so fast in that game that I didn't enjoy it. But then the next year in 89, that was the heyday of Bo Jackson. I remember Bo knows everything was going crazy, but to sit back there, I'm sitting next to Nolan Ryan in the bullpen in Anaheim. And I'm sitting there going, I'm sure he was probably like, will you please stop asking me questions? I'm asking about how do you stay strong? How did you maintain your velocity, this and that? So he gave me a couple nuggets there that I kept from that game forward, from his running habits to weightlifting, especially lower part of his body, maintaining things to be strong all the way through. So those experiences and going back after that game, it was really, really cool to be a part of that when Bo Jackson and Ronald Reagan's, doing the first inning of that game with Vince Scully. And then I remember going, baseball, here's Bo Jackson, Vince Scully saying after he had a home run, welcome to baseball. And then we're flying back we're playing the Yankees, and the pilots are getting out of the cockpit, and notice I hated flying. So they're both asking, periodically to Bo Jackson for autographs. And finally I'm in a full lab and I'm sweating. I'm like, all right, by the way, who is flying this plane? I'm thinking airplane movie with that blow up, pilot. I'm like, who's flying this plane? Somebody get back up there. Like, don't worry about it. We'll be all right. The worst case scenario, we'll crash it. You won't even know the difference. I'm like, get back up in there. So then we landed and the people were just running. I'm thinking, this is Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. People were just swarming him in the airport in New York. I'm thinking, this is probably one of the coolest experiences ever. It wasn't an individual thing for me, but it was more of to sit back and watching something that right now we're seeing with Shohei Ohtani or even Mike Trout, where everywhere they go, that's where everywhere Bo went, it was the most unbelievable thing ever. So that was probably the coolest things, other than the fact meeting all the immortals of the game of baseball. And all these guys that I absolutely hated are now my teammates, which I to this day contend that I would have been better off never making an all-star game, because I went from hating all these guys to all of a sudden they're my friends, and you kind of lose an edge. It's like when your teammate goes to another organization, it's like, I don't have that edge where, hey, if I accidentally hit him, I don't feel bad. Now, if I throw a ball inside and hit him, I feel bad because he's a friend. So I always like the edge, but I lost a lot of the edge when I'm facing, the Don Mattingly or Kirby Puckett, those guys. All of a sudden, they're my friends now. And I hated that because I didn't want any friends on the other team. I really didn't.
I love that. Unless
it was you, Ollie, of course. Unless it was you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is so old school. And it was I cannot think of who got me. I think it might've been Dwight Evans was over with us for 1 year. And you did you play with Chili Davis?
No, I got traded for him. No, I played against him a million times. Yeah.
That's what got me confused, because he was with us back when I came back in '97.
Yeah.
So I was going, wait, were you with Chili? Well, Chili spent my whole rookie year trying to talk to me. Going when we were passing back and forth in BP, he would be trying to talk to me. And Dwight Evans is like grabbing me and dragging me into the dugout. I'm like going, yeah, but that's Chili Davis. And he wants to talk to me. And he's like going, he wants to see if you're nice.
Yeah.
Because, just in case you hit him or you might hit him or you want to hit him. And I was like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, all right. Yeah. So, I ignored Chili for the next couple of years, just completely walk away just in case I had to hit him and I wouldn't feel bad.
Yeah.
But I love that mentality. That was it. That was us. It was, that was baseball, man.
Yeah.
You got time for one more?
Yeah.
All right. So I can't let you go without bringing up that, you come from a bygone era where guys a lot more guys played for one team. You talked about Don Mattingly, Kirby Puckett, and for the most part, you did. You had that brief cup of Joe with the Angels, but loyalty is a two-way street. You have to find an organization that values you like you value them, so that when free agency comes, you can find a value that you agree on. What did it mean to you, though, to play the bulk of your career for one team in Kansas City and be able to say, I was a Royal for 13 seasons?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of mentors. Paul Splittorff was a guy that wore that uniform forever. George Brett always told me, he goes, if you get a chance to wear just that one uniform your entire career, you've done something special. And when he said that early on in my career, because even though the Royals were pretty consistent as far as keeping guys that they liked around, for a long period of time, but you kept thinking, first you did make the big leagues. I'm hoping to make it 1 year, then you're 2 years, and then before long you're still wearing that same uniform and thinking, George told me that if I get a chance to play my entire career with the Royals, and never put on a different uniform, that'll be the coolest thing ever. And I'll never forget, because here I am, I'm pitching in Minnesota. As a matter of fact, it was July, say 3rd or 4th. And Herc Robinson's our general manager, calls me up. I'm pitching this day. And he goes, hey, would you approve a trade? I'm like, Herc, I'm pitching tonight. He goes, no, but would you approve a trade to the Texas Rangers? I'm like, because he had talked to me before about maybe going to the Colorado Rockies. And I'm like, you know what? At that point, I was a 10-5 guy, so they couldn't trade me without my permission. So I'm like, all right, Herc. All right, you know what? That point, your feelings get hurt a little bit, because I'm pitching that night, and my mindset is I got one job to do, and that's to win a game. And so I'm like, all right, we'll talk after the game. And lo and behold, that's when I get hit with a line drive by Paul Molitor in the first inning, break my leg, and then I get a call back. I guess the trade's off. I'm pretty sure it's off. Yeah, I'm sure it's off. Yeah. But at that point, I'm like, you know what? I never thought. There was times we won the World Series. We go, we have our parade. We go see President Reagan. I come home, literally, my eyes are still bleeding from champagne getting squirted in your eyes for like 5,000 days in a row. I look up on the TV and it says, I've been traded for Chili Davis when he was with the Giants. I'm like, wait a minute. How'd that happen? We just won the World Series. And John Sherrill, so general manager, calls me right away. He goes, trust me, son. Whenever you see your name in a trade rumor, that means you're not going. It's when you don't hear your name. That's when you're getting traded. So, lo and behold, 11 years later, I did get traded for Chili Davis. But it was one of those weird things where I felt like, all right, I did everything I could. I, went through all kinds of stuff, surgeries and battle, the ups and downs with the organization. I didn't want to go anywhere. But when I heard and it was asked if you would approve a trade, I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to do that. And then, lo and behold, that winter, when I just barely got out of my cast in my leg, I was in a cast for 12 weeks after that line drive by Molly. And I always joke with Molly, I said, dude, you're going for 3,000 hits. You hit a line drive off my leg. It goes to first baseman Jose Offerman, and it's an out. I would have gladly given up a hit so you didn't break my leg. So, and then they said, hey, this is right before the World Series. And they can never announce trades during the playoffs and World Series. How about approving a trade to the Angels? I'm like, you know what? My oldest one was going into kindergarten. I was like, you know what? If there's ever a time to give up on that dream of playing and wearing that one uniform your whole career, that was the time. So that's when I decided to approve that trade. And if I didn't do that, I won't be doing what I'm doing right now. So I always believe there's a path you're on for whatever reason. If I don't approve that trade to the Angels, I'm not doing Angels games right now. So maybe it was one of those things where maybe it didn't work out on the field, but in the end, it worked out what I'm doing right now.
Wow.
Very good.
Anything else from you, 2Gs?
Gooby, man, always loved playing with you. One of my favorite teammates of all time. And can't tell you how much appreciate you coming on board and just talking baseball for an hour. Always love following you on Twitter. You're a good follow, usually mildly entertaining, and give us some Angels updates. But brother, I appreciate it, really do. And be staying in touch.
I know. And Brandon, by the way, when Ole was especially with Baltimore there in the dugout, I would laugh at our hitters. I go, dude, you guys got no chance. I was sitting there laughing. He goes, all right, hey, we're at the bar quicker now. Ole's coming in there. We got no chance. We're not worried about this going extra innings. It's listening. I go, that curveball was like, man, I'm glad I'm not a hitter. I'm so glad I'm not a hitter. I'm glad we're not in the National League. So eventually we're all going to be DH. There's going to be the universal DH. But at that point, I was so glad I didn't have to swing the bat, because
Oof.
I realize that in spring training games, how hard it is to hit. And that's the one thing I always teach my kids, pitching wise. I go, you don't realize how hard it is. Just ask Michael Jordan to hit a baseball. It's the hardest thing ever.
You got out while the getting was good, right? Right when interleague was starting.
Yeah, yeah. But as usual, we all as pitchers think we can hit a ball 500 feet anyhow. So I would have been swinging as hard as I could. I might not ever hit anything, but I would have been swinging real hard.
Hey, there you go.
Oh man.
Well,
You're awesome, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
and I appreciate the time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's all we have this week for that 90s baseball pod. Thanks again, Mark Gubicza. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Gubicza. For Gregg Olson, this is Brandon Warren signing off, saying thank you so much for checking out that 90s baseball pod powered by Access Twins. We'll catch you next week. Peace.